Welcome to Karen's Conversation. I've been really looking forward to this one. Today I'm talking to Michi Tyson, and we're going to explore all things related to boosting your process improvement. But before we get into that, I'm going to throw to Michi and get you to introduce yourself. Welcome, Michi.
Hey, Karen. Thank you so much for having me. Just a bit about myself. I am a business agility coach, educator, and change facilitator. So I help organizations change.
Excellent. And tell us a bit about agile attitude in your organization.
So my business is really all around identifying where your business can improve in terms of processes, where we can improve in terms of services, specifically around improving your customer and user experiences within your environment, but also to create more productivity within the business. So it's really all about creating organizational processes and structures that drive efficiency and effectiveness. Specifically, my focus is on productivity, so it's on effectiveness, getting the right outcome, as opposed to just doing things faster. And as part of that, we look at pretty much everything within your organization. There's usually no stone left unturned. So it's really about not how do we put a different veneer over what you already have, but really looking into both the processes and the workflows that you run through, but also the culture that underlies what it is you do, what it is you deliver, and how you deliver it.
Excellent. Now, I was looking at your bio on the Agile Attitude, and it said that back in 2008, you were dragged kicking and screaming into the world of Scrum. So tell us about that experience. What was it?
I will probably start off by saying that I'm possibly one of the most change-resistant people that you'll ever meet. So definitely one of the most change-resistant people I've ever met. And as a coach, you can imagine I meet a lot of them. Change, I will say, is always hard. It is harder for some people than it is for others, and it definitely hasn't come easy for me. So I started my Agile journey, as you say, about 10 years ago or so. And my very first Agile project was a highly innovative engagement in a professional services environment. So I come from a very structured project management background. I've worked a lot in Prince 2 and other waterfall environments. So Agile in itself is already a bit of a shell shock. And then working on something that's really, really critical, because it also involved a highly sensitive client engagement. So it's critical. It's highly innovative, and we're trying to do something completely new and untested in a professional services environment at that point. So, it scared my pants off, to be honest with you. So I was like, no, not me. And it took a fair bit of coaching, coaxing from my Agile coach at the time to get me to at least give it a go, if that makes sense. So I fully understand why people go, hey, hang on just a second. I'm not sure this crazy thing is actually going to work. And as you know, as people, we are highly habitual. We're very ritual driven. So once you're actually, you have a few years of experience with something, it's very easy to think, hey, why don't we just do what we've always done? Because we already know, we have experience with it. And back then I was very much in a mindset of, hey, if we just follow the process harder, we might actually get a better outcome. So I wasn't quite in a mindset just yet to say, okay, let's give this a go. I will say, you fast forward by about 18 months or so, and we managed to deliver a highly, highly innovative, will only transform our clients' internal operations. It even won an International Innovations Award, and we managed a really strong relationship with them as well. And one thing I think that I took away most importantly following the project is that the team that's worked on it, we managed to establish a team unit that was based on trust, shared responsibility, mutual accountability, and a level of high performance that we actually managed to sustain for years to come. So all of those kind of things made me go, hang on, maybe there is something to it. And I kind of took it from there.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's like you say, it's hard for people to let go. I'm not an agile expert, but it's quite a different mindset from following waterfalls to then looking at what potentially looks extremely chaotic.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Michi, at the SMF conference last year, you talked about some of the common issues you come across with process improvement. Do you want to walk us through some of them, and then after that, we'll get into how we can address some of those challenges?
Absolutely. So, in terms of process improvement projects, some of the common issues that we see, I will say the first one is, bizarrely, details before context. So something that I've experienced, and you probably have experienced it as well, is by the time that as organizations, as teams, as departments, by the time we change is really, really overdue. So most people are actually very excited when we first get started and bombard you with, enormous amounts of detail. What they do, how they do it, why they do it, with whom they do it. Often loads and loads of documentation. You're probably aware of that as well. So you start, you start process improvement, and the first thing you do is people send you about 15 years worth of documentation. And you go, this is great. It's a lot of detail. I have no context for it. So we tend to jump straight into the deep dive without really understanding what's the purpose. What's the outcome at the end of this process? Why do we have this process, as opposed to how can we improve this process? Something else that, and I think they somewhat related, the detail over context, and not involving the right people. So something else that I notice is that often process improvement projects are driven top down, meaning they're driven by decision makers, but not necessarily the people who actually have any kind of involvement with the process, whether it's, they have to carry it out and follow it, or they're inputting to it or outputting to it. And what happens if I don't have those people as part of the process, the third issue that we see is not meeting stakeholder needs. It's all well and fine, saying, coming from a theoretical perspective of this is what the process should be. If I'm not meeting everyone's needs, or create a process that is nigh impossible to follow, it's not really useful to me. Something else that we see a lot, and those two issues that I think go hand in hand, is way too much technology and solving the problem too quickly. And I often think we kind of look at process improvement, especially in the service management environment as well, from a perspective of, this isn't working, there's this fantastic new tool out there, let's just have that. And it's like, well, it's kind of about everything else, fool with a tool is still a fool.
That's right.
It seems like the really obvious quick answer.
One of the analogies that I've used, it's like, if you're bad processing one tool, it's going to be a bad processing another tool. And it's like, if you're a bad driver driving a Mini, you're a bad driver driving a Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just going to cost you more when you crash it, hey?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's, it seems like a really quick, easy, elegant solution. But what we often find is, as you say, it's not actually solving the problem. It's just, postponing it or shifting it. Artifact over process is another one. And I think this is a lot of businesses are trying to do the right thing, getting themselves external help for their process improvement, but then only give them the mandate to create artifacts. So then we have recommendations, we have to-be processes, we have all this kind of stuff of what we should be doing, but really not enough detail to say, how do we actually go from where we're at now to where we need to be? And if people don't understand how to get from A to B, guess what? They're not going there. They have there's no reason for them to even start. And that simply means that at the back end of it, we often see no action. So we see large programs, great output, no outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, going back to what you said, involving stakeholders. I think that's one of the mistakes. We tend to operate in a silo, and I've worked in an organisation that spent a lot of time and money working on a certain catalog, rolled it out, and wondered why people weren't using it. People wanted a lot more self-service to reduce service desk calls, and it wasn't being used because the business didn't understand the terminology, they didn't understand the navigation, and it was a complete failure purely because they got the customer involved in that issue.
Yeah. And it seems like you're doing the right thing, and this is where I often feel for businesses going through that change as well, because you try the right thing, you follow, you know, best practice and so on. Best practice is still very big, and unfortunately, often the focus is just wrong. And I will also say, I think we often focus a little bit too much on efficiency than effectiveness necessarily. So we're trying to get things faster, not necessarily better. And that is a massive issue. If I'm starting to implement processes that are purely geared towards efficiency, my actual effectiveness, my uptake, my outcomes completely fall by the wayside.
That's right. That's right. We talked previously about the service desk close as many tickets as they can, be, you know, effective, the efficiency in terms of the calls coming back. And you know, I've got an example, metrics driving back, calls being closed. Yes, it looks very effective, but it's not efficient at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the approaches we can use to address those challenges, which I think most people will relate to. I've certainly come across all of those. Let's talk about systems thinking and the complexity theory.
Absolutely. I'll start off by explaining what I mean by systems here. So in systems thinking, when we talk about the system, a system is an abstract concern, an abstract concept that represents an issue or concern. So when we think of systems, they're not necessarily technical systems, but rather systems that contain a whole bunch of different elements, such as people, beliefs, values, policies, and so on, that form a holistic whole. And what we look at in systems thinking is how those individual components actually interact. So it's their interactiveness as well as the complexity in their interaction that creates an observed outcome. You will have heard of the saying, you know, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And that's very much what systems thinking looks at, is where does that invisible bit happen? If I take all the sum of my parts, why is there all of a sudden more? So how does it create that? So this is what systems in the systems thinking context are about. And for example, there are also standard systems that you may be quite familiar with. For example, vicious cycle is a very, very common model from a systems thinking background, and it's one of those systems. So, and you'll know it, it's Friday today. I definitely know it. Busy weeks coming back after Christmas, so you know you're running way behind work.
Yeah.
The logical thing we all do is we work more. So all of a sudden I'm working 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. What happens if I work 14 hours a day, and you'll be able to relate to that as well, is I go to bed late. I'm unrested in the morning when I get up. I'm in a miserable mood for starters, so you know, don't talk to me. But also, I'm actually not very productive because I'm then hanging around until about 10:30 going, I don't know what I'm doing. And by about 4 o'clock, I'm jittery on coffee because that's the only way I managed to make it to that point in the afternoon. All that together only means I'm going to be running even later tomorrow. So I'm kind of starting to make it worse. And this is what systems thinking is all about. And this is why I like thinking of systems in that way, and why I like thinking about organizational change and process improvement in that way, because the logical answer is not always the right answer. Running behind and working more doesn't actually work, because there is more connectedness and there's more complexity in the system than we see at first glance. Complexity theory now is derived from systems thinking, and complexity theory applies systems thinking to organizations. Over the years, we've seen lots and lots of different change models, and it goes, you know, the live and change model of unfreeze, change, refreeze is a very, very, by now, a very outdated model. Where we look at, disrupt the status quo, make the change, and then refreeze the status quo.
If it was that easy.
Yeah, if only it were. And this is the thing, and this is where complexity theory comes in, because complexity theory asks the question, why isn't it that simple? If we look at an organization the way we have traditionally, which is via org charts, and there's a little bit of detail before context, because again, if you come in as an external support helping organizations in process improvement, almost always one of the first pieces of collateral you get is an org chart, as if that explained how people interact in the organization, which it doesn't. But we have a mindset of looking at organizations in this really straightforward manner, and then are surprised that if I do something within that linear system, the outcome is absolutely not what I was expecting. So complexity theory goes, hey, I don't think organizations work that way. So maybe we need a different approach. Look at them as what in systems thinking and complexity theory we call complex adaptive systems. And complex adaptive systems are exactly that. So they are systems of interconnected agents, free agents. So here with complex adaptive systems, we're in an organizational context, we tend to talk about people. And we look at the structures that they create within themselves, the way that they interact. A flock of birds, because this sounds really abstract, so a flock of birds is a really good example of a complex adaptive system. When you look at a flock of birds out in the sky, they make those amazing shapes. There's dozens and dozens of birds. They change in formation. They fly from place to place. They're always coordinated. They always look planned. Yet a flock of birds does not have a manager bird or a bird hierarchy. Instead, they're guided by, they have changing leadership based on different situations, based on different contexts. And they're guided by a general direction and purpose. And that is how they build those incredibly complex shapes. They're also very adaptive in the way that birds engage with their environment. So, for example, migrating birds, if last year's nesting spot is now a Woolies car park, there's a couple of things that birds definitely won't do. So they're definitely not going to nest there and get run over by a truck. Not the smart thing to do. They also are not going to write up a recommendations report, wait for the next management meeting, present it, wait for sign off, and flap around aimlessly in the process. all of which is unfortunately often how we treat environmental change in businesses. And they go, oh, we need to escalate this up to line. Let's write a report. Let's table it at the next meeting. Let's wait for 3 months and just hover around aimlessly until someone makes a decision. And then maybe we'll land somewhere. So birds instead kind of go, hang on just a second. Something in my environment has changed. What is my major outcome? My outcome is not nesting on the spot. My outcome is not to die. My outcome is building a nest, getting some food, laying some eggs, and surviving the next 6-month period. So they're guided by those values and principles and find themselves a new nesting spot. So this is what a complex adaptive system is. It's complex in the way that it interacts within, and it's adaptive in the way that it responds to its environment. And this is really, for me, for businesses, one of the major things that we need to learn is our environment changes faster and faster and faster. It's not only technology that drives it, it's simply the way we live nowadays. If you think back to your childhood, I think to my childhood, you didn't get new stuff all that much. Regardless of what it was, whether it was, food or toys or clothes, we never lived with an expectation of things changing this much. Now things change all the time, and as a business, if you don't learn how to change as fast as your environment, as your competitive environment, your financial environment, your legislative environment, if you don't learn to change at least as fast, you're going to be falling behind. very, very quickly, very rapidly. This is not a 5-year span anymore that it takes, my competitors 5 years to overtake me. It'll take them 5 months. And this is the rate of change that we need to deal with these days. The same goes, politically. Political situations change, legislation changes. A lot of my clients work in environments where they are, at least to an extent, reliant on government changes, legislative changes, etc. They actually start to change faster and faster, and they change more and more frequently. And that makes it so important to start looking at organizations not in a how can we tap down processes tighter and make it harder to change, but actually how can we have an adaptive system that goes, okay, this is where my environment is going, I'll follow, and hopefully as the next step going, I know everything will change. How about I just change that a little bit faster? And when you can get on the front foot, this is when we then start talking about innovation. This is when we talk about market disruption, etc.
Yeah, it's a bit like Ivan McFarlane, expert, talks about, and this is adaptive, but he talks about intelligent disobedience, and he uses the example, they get something that isn't scripted, or they have a circumstance that we should allow them to be disobedient. If they get a call and they've been told, you should not take those calls and fix that, but they can, because they've got that knowledge, then be disobedient. Disobedience and intelligent disobedience. So that's sort of adaptive. Yeah, you rise in organisations, especially move faster and faster. And processes faster. They'll go out of existence doing that.
Yeah. And I like the thing that you said about disobedience, because this is one thing, whether you call it disobedience, I'm actually just going to call it doing the right thing. And it's something that I'm very, very passionate when I do talk to people about, is the way we work these days, the way we hire, the way we use our collective intelligence as well. Because I think it's becoming more and more, this is a tighter environment. We do not live in an environment of surplus anymore. We don't have stacks of money to spend. We've already talked about the rate of change, so we don't have stacks of time to spend either. And for me, one mindset shift I'm very keen to see is away from authoritarian, top-down, we know best, you do the thing, to going towards collective intelligence and actually going, hey, you pay your staff, make sure you pay them for their brain, obedience, do the right thing, as opposed to just paying them for their hands. If you just keep shoving work down the line and say do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, how we, as we are so educated to do still, all you're going to get is hands. And this is where that drive of efficiency has initially come from, because it's come from a manufacturing background. So it's about how can I make your hands work faster? And it's like, well, you will see exponential gains. I'll still only have 2 hands and 5 fingers on each hand if I'm really lucky. So there's only so fast those are going to go. This can go an awful lot faster if we learn how to tap into people's brains, into the actual ability to laterally think and their ability to create a collective intelligence that's greater than each individual person's intelligence. This is where we then start to go to effectiveness, but also am able to increase our efficiency way beyond what's possible if I only look at getting people to work faster or cutting down part of the process by implementing technology. Automation is only going to get me so far, for example, unless I really think about the smartest way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michi, if people wanted to have more information about complexity theory and systems thinking, what are some of the sources they could go to?
There's a great, if you can make it through, there's a very good book on systems thinking by Jerry Weinberg. I will say it's not the easiest read. Someone else to check out who's really, really big in this, and I would also recommend his framework, Kinefin, is Dave Snowden in the UK. from Cognitive Edge. There's great primers, quick primers on systems thinking. If you just want to do a quick Google, there's also universities. For example, I'm pretty sure that the UK Open University does a bunch of publications on systems thinking, and they do a great systems thinking modeling and diagramming primer. And there's also, I think, an open courses book in the US available. Harvard Business Review has also got some great articles on complexity theory and how it applies to organizations. So there's definitely stacks out there. I would also recommend you want to have a chat about that kind of stuff, give me a shout. I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah, so I'm just watching the clock, and we've only covered half of what we want to talk about. So I'm going to ask you to come back for another conversation so we can carry on.
I would absolutely love that. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. So we'll definitely have part 2 of this.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about iceberg models and hypothesis and continuing improvement, evaluation, all sorts of stuff to cover. So that's going to be great. We'll work out a time and date to do that. So, Michi, if anyone wanted more information about you and Agile Attitude, where would they go?
You can go onto my website, which is agileattitude.com.au. Check me out on Facebook, Agile Attitude, or myself, Michi Tyson. Also check me out on LinkedIn, Michi Tyson. I'm relatively straightforward to find. I'm also Michi Tyson on Twitter.
Awesome. Michi, thanks so much, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Take care. Bye.